No one in the South ever dies. They move on over Jordan, go home to God, up the mountain, on to glory, and back to home. It's a mandatory evacuation. So, when little Lanny Jean Mitchell was pressed into service as the oldest of the Mitchell girls to kiss her poor dead grandpop goodbye, you knew it was tragedy in a box just waiting to happen. He crossed Jordan in the middle of a sticky summer. So by the time they got him to the funeral home, he's already starting to smell a little. Those boys put him up on some ice right next to the key lime pie. Then little Lanny's mama come in, weeping and wailing. Evidently, Grandpapa got the idea from a traveling preacher from Wakulla that a body's got to be returned to ash and scattered over the ground. He said in his will that the preacher said in his 10th that ashes go to ashes and dust back to dust. A body's not meant to be stuck in some apocryphal box shot up with chemicals. But exactly how you get to be the ashes and the dust, well, that's a tricky question. So in his will, Grandpa say to go ahead and turn him to ash right then and there and serve heaven in the process. Well, little Lanny's mama did not want her daddy burnt up in a big oven, but she did want to honor the will and get her inheritance and put an in-ground pool in the backyard by next summer. So she told the funeral home boys not to do nothing to the body, and she'd be back with little Lanny to say goodbye. Now, I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with Florida heat in the middle of August, but it'll about rot the meat off a chicken's leg before you can get it from the butcher's to the fryer. So when little Lanny's mama come back with a crying little Lanny in tow, Grandpa's looking more like stewed beef and less like the grand man we all pretended him to be. Well, the funeral home boys had done about as good as they could do. Well, Grandpop's body was nicely laid up on a slab of polished walnut trimmed in gold paint made for just such an occasion. His brown suit fit nice. It had been bought for Janet McCoy Finch's wedding last month, and his hair shined like a hazelnut halo from the Jesus himself. His new shoes were missing, but that was little Lanny's mama. She had bought them for Pop herself for the Finch girl's wedding. But they fit her husband Lester all right, and so she couldn't see any sense throwing him in the fire when Lester could use him all winter for work and whatnot. The only thing missing and out of place was the stillness. The stillness of a man who had never been still, not one moment in his life. He might be laughing or working or drinking or fighting, but this is the first time that man had been still in 73 years. Little Lanny looked at him in his stillness. She looked and looked because Mama had said that Pop was here. That they was going to see him. That they was going to say goodbye. And that little Lanny had to kiss him and say goodbye because the other girls were too young to remember, and so somebody had to do it for them. And she was the oldest, so she was bound by duty to do it. But Pop wasn't here. He was gone. It was all stillness and a silly old suit and a little bit of skin sagging off a walnut board like thick grease off a good piece of hot bacon. Oh, her mama threw herself over the body and cried and screamed. And the funeral home boys finally pulled her off and said something low and wiped her face and gave her orange blossom water. Then her mama got up slow and shoved little Lanny toward that suit and the grease sopped up in it. And she pushed back, but her mama glared through red eyes and said, "Go on, girl." And so little Lanny slunk forward. Her mama whispered to kiss him goodbye. But little Lanny, she stood as still as that suit. And her mama screamed to kiss him goodbye. And it wasn't the words, but the howl of the beast of the animal that we all got crouched deep inside us that moved little Lanny forward. She bent over that suit, down to the big grease spot of a stain on the well-turned collar, and kissed him on the tip of his nose. The tip was soft and blobby, and it stuck to her lips a little bit. And when she rose back up, that tip rose with her. And before she knew it, she breathed in hard, and the tip of Pop Pop's nose slid right down her throat. She were never the same after that. Some say she got more mature because a little bit of Grandpop's wisdom got stuck inside her. Some say she got more quiet because she was in shock forever from eating a nose. But, I think she took a little bit of the old and made a little bit of new, and was all the happier for it. And I should know, because I married her.